Okay, 3, 2, 1. Welcome everybody to today's podcast interview. Today we're talking to Omar from mamori.io, who is essentially the CEO of a best practice and productivity improvement cybersecurity software that provides businesses an all-in-one solution to cybersecurity best practices. So join me in welcoming Omar to the podcast today.
Thanks, David. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So I'll get straight in. I've got a few questions lined up to ask you, as well as some more specific questions about the recent hack at MGM and Caesars Casino, which we'll cover at the end. For anyone joining this live stream, if you want to ask any questions about the software or about industry trends, things like this at the end, please do put them at the end. So, jumping straight in into the questions that I have for you, I just want to get a basic rundown of what mamori.io is, and let's start with what Mamori is.
Sure. Thanks, David. Yeah, so Mamori is a all-in-one bit of software that companies or individuals can deploy on their infrastructure. And this software has all the modules that are required to implement all the technical safeguards required by, SOC 2, ISO 27001, high trust, the Essential 8, etc., in terms of access management and data privacy. So it's got it all baked in. Users can just, you can use it to access, Linux boxes, Windows boxes, databases. It's got the 2FA baked in. It integrates with everything, and it has all the controls and things like that. So you just deploy it, start using it, you become more productive, and without you even knowing, you're following best practice. That's kind of the goal of it, right? To make security really simple for a department or a large business or even a small one.
Yeah, right. Okay, so it's a pretty in-depth piece of software then. I guess that the next question that comes off the back of this is then, why should government agencies or businesses be looking into software like this? Like, why is it important for them to utilize something like this?
Yeah, so what we've seen in doing audits, security audits for businesses and things like that, businesses are actually struggling in actually implementing best practice, and that's the reality. It's actually cost prohibitive to actually do, the essential 8 things, or even, whichever standard you look at. And every country has a different name for it, but it's actually, 2FA everything, protect your admin access, you do your application controls, have some automation around your, who has access to what and who approves it. It sounds very simple in theory, a best practice. But to actually implement it in practice, it takes companies, multi-years to implement fully across the organizations. They have to buy a lot of different softwares to put together and integrate it themselves. So it just takes a lot of time and effort to do it. So why Mamori is essentially, it shortens the amount of time and the amount of, struggles or barriers or things you have to buy to meet best practice. And that's kind of the goal, because the quicker you meet the best practice, the quicker you are actually secure. So for example, if you implement the Essential 8 in Australia, then 85% of the attacks you become protected just by doing these 8 essential things, right? So how fast can you get to that? How fast can you get to full maturity is the question. And if you're a business owner, how much is it going to cost you? So you don't have a lot of money to spend. You've got a lot of time to burn. We made it super simple. You just deploy this thing. Your people start using it. It's easier to work when you have an automated system. It's all integrated, and you're secure. So that's why people should look at it.
Okay, I'm going to get to some more Essential 8 and compliance questions a little bit later, but before we get into that, I just want to hear a little bit about how this actually integrates with different types of productivity suites that currently exist. Like, how does it all sort of come together and create this solution for businesses to utilize. Can you give me some like technical details on, I guess, how that sort of works?
Yeah, so I'll give you three examples. One is a cloud-born business, meaning everything's in the cloud, right? Then you have a hybrid business, and the last example will be with just a lot of legacy software and basically business with their own data centers and infrastructure in on site, right? Very little. They're looking to move to the cloud later, so there's still a subset of business that do that. Or for some reason, like power plants, so just everything's on site. So for the so across there's a similarity across these type of three deployments. The essential things that people want to need to integrate with is their directories, right? Where are the identities? Typically, it's going to be an Azure directory or some other, Okta directory or Duo directory, or maybe just, an LDAP server somewhere. So we integrate with any directory that you have where you have your people, right? And you can have one or more. So some people have cloud directories and they have LDAP servers here, and they just need to sort of have a blend, and they want to create, so we integrate with one or more directories. We also integrate with your two-factor providers. So if you already have like Okta or Duo that you love, no problem. We integrate with those. So then we can help you two-factor the things that Okta and Duo can't do, right? So Okta and Duo are great for apps, and sometimes they do SSH and servers, but they're not very good for databases or like file servers and things like that, right? You got to do a lot of extra work, and possibly sometimes they can't make it happen. We integrate with we work with almost all the databases out there. So for example, for your data privacy, when you need to two-factor your database access, whether it's in the cloud or on-premise. So we integrate with all the key things that that you typically have to integrate with when you need to, two-factor. Someone needs to you have an identity and get to something, right? So some server somewhere in the cloud. And now some of the other integrations that are kind of important but not mentioned as much are alerting, right? So we have a full-blown API. So some people use Slack. They like to get their integrations. In Asia, they use Line. There's all these different sort of team communication tools that people use, and we integrate with um, all the ones that are corporates use, so then they can get their alerts and things in the way they like them, right? Yeah, so we have a gamut of integrations just to make sure it's easy to deploy and easy to use. Yep.
Right, okay. That sounds like a pretty good idea for a lot of organizations, especially those that are trying to meet a level of compliance or just have, like the software's sort of stated as a best practice solution. I wonder if, is there functionality to get like a regular report out of the solution for organizations to have as like a quick glance? So if they had like a weekly meeting where they had to go over best practice and things like MFA if it's enabled, if perhaps they had a new development system integrated that is integrated then with Mamori, would they then be able to like export a report out for like a quick glance?
Correct. So the system, so actually, good thing you raised that. So the one of the hardest things when you implement, if you try to build your own, and historically when people buy, the network solution and the PAM and the DAM and this and try to cobble this, then you have to build out your SIM, right? Your analytics engine and your logs to integrate your web access, your RDP access, your SSH access, your TCP access, and everything. So then you can get analytics on who's doing what, how they're authenticating. So all this is integrated out of the box. So we have n levels. So you have your detailed logs of all your connections that come in, who's in it, how they authenticate, all the authentication events to get their authentication. What did they do? What did they access? When did they access it? And if they ran through a database, for example, all the SQL they ran. So you have very detailed logs, so you can do analysis if you need to go and look for a particular event. But also you have dashboards. So we have um, we use micrometer. So everything's instrumented with micrometer. So we can pump it to your own existing SIM. But if you don't have one, we have an analytic store that stores the time, like a time series database with all the events. So people do have dashboards on all the connection activity, and they mainly use it for if they have publicly exposed things. Sometimes they want to track connections that are coming from the we geo-encode all the traffic, so we can see, okay, you're getting connections from, from a country that's typically you don't have employees, so maybe you wanna find out why. Maybe someone's traveling, etc. So, yeah, so you have a series of dashboarding abilities. You can set up alerts, but if you need specific reports, sometimes auditors request you, hey, I need a report every week, or of a log of this particular activity. You can also set up policy rules. So you can say, okay, if this, it's like building, remember in the old Outlook, you could build email rules, like if this user connects to this and does that, and then it would put all your emails in one little folder. Similar builder. We kept it nice and easy for users. So you build these rules, and then any event that meets that criteria will end up in a special log. So then you can just dump out that log to a spreadsheet, right? Because auditors love their spreadsheets, and you give them that spreadsheet every week, right? Love their spreadsheets, and then you have the special report. You don't have to go and it's just there, right? All the activities there. So yeah, so those are the kind of 3 levels that we do. So again, just the logs, your analytics store, your dashboards, and then your special requested logs that are required for auditors, right? And you can just generate on the activity that they ask for. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that sounds pretty sweet actually, because I know I'm someone who absolutely loves mailbox rules, especially. So that would
Mm.
work very good for me. And having worked in compliance roles before, being able to give that information to uh, the business decision maker, who's actually going to make the decision on what's going to happen with, I guess the information that's being fed through would be super vital. So it's good to hear that there's this integration and functionality, and especially the dashboard is obviously very visual, but being able to export a report to distribute to a team of people who perhaps don't have access to the dashboard is a super useful functionality. So I really like the idea of that. On to the next question I had. I'm interested to hear what a typical business case is, or maybe a ideal client business case for Mamori is, who could potentially use this software.
Yeah, so I'll give you 3 because it kind of fell into kind of 3 buckets as the business was growing. Um, the first one, and they're kind of by size or maturity of existing company, right? So when you have a business that's kind of smaller, medium, that has basically they had very little security software. Maybe they had just like a VPN, an old school VPN and the firewall, right? And they just wanted to be secure. And most of them are coming to us now because of actually insurance, right? Their insurance says, hey, if your premiums are going to go up if you don't implement this stuff, or we're just not going to insure you for cyber, right, anymore. Because the past couple of years, cyber insurance, I don't know if you guys know this, but cyber insurance got hammered, right, since COVID, right? I think hackers went haywire, and then premiums followed accordingly, right? So the business owner is like, whoa, my insurance used to cost 5 grand. Now they want to charge me 40 grand, or they may not even give it to me because I don't have all these things that I have no idea. So they come to us, hey, how do I implement all this stuff? And we go, okay, just deploy my Mamori server and configure it and start using it. And you can tell your insurance company, that you now do, SOC 2 and whatever the insurance company needs. They can tick all the boxes, right? So that's kind of the first case. It's just ticking the boxes so businesses can actually be secure enough to get their insurance again, right? Now,
Right.
those are the guys who don't have anything. Now, what if you have something already? So then you have your more mature companies they may have a PAM like a CyberArk. They already have like a Fortinet, but what they're missing again for for reasons is they don't have the data security. It's not super tight because CyberArk and those guys just don't have the data security part of it properly, right? The access controls. They may not have the automated workflow actually sometimes. Sometimes they haven't bought SailPoint because they just don't want to spend a couple $1 million, right? So we fill the gap. You can use Mamori. You can keep your existing PAM. We don't mess around with that. But now for the database, you now have a DB PAM, right? So you're going to get you integrate with your their directories, and then they can use those same directory logins to connect to any database. So we have customers that have Oracle, SQL Server, Mongo, and et cetera, Cloudera, and you know um, and then they connect and they get two-factor when the users just go and connect to those databases, and that makes the auditors happy. So auditors come in and they have an access record. Yes, they can put the tick. All of our database access is multi-factored, and we know who approved the access because, with mamori, users can just request the access, whether it's during hours or after hours, and then the application owner approves it. So we know the five things. So who, when, why, and for how long, right? That access was there. And we also have a recording. So that's a very common use case, just covering the gap. And then the last use case is actually for external staff. So you have companies who have a lot of remote developers, and traditionally they've been giving them VPN access. Now that's kind of frowned upon now. So they're like, whoa, the auditors are really on us because we have all these people that are coming in, but they're all over the world. Accenture, for example, might be their vendor. It's not always the same person that comes in, right? They can't control it. And how do they give it just access to just a couple servers that they need to get access to do their work, right? So we make that super easy, right? So with Mamori, you don't have to give them VPN access. You don't have to put them on your corporate directory. You can really isolate them. It's very easy to do. And then they just, if you want to, you could even just have it 100% web only. So through the web, they come in through a portal, and then from there they get web SSH and web RDP or web database access to just the things they need. Or if they need to, they could give them a ZTNA. We have a ZTNA module, and they could give them IP access to just the microsegmentation that they need, right? But it's not on their corporate network. So the key thing for the auditors looking for is for remote access is no possibility of lateral movement, right? So we don't want these remote people, remote staff, or remote users being able to see things and scan, right? So Mamori has scanning is a permission in Mamori. So when you're actually on the ZTNA network, if you try to run a scan and you don't have the permission, your machine gets blocked, right? So that's kind of the best way to stop ransomware, right? So imagine if someone broke into your house, right? But the guy was blind, right? He's not going to steal a lot, right? So if a hacker, that's right, so you can't see anything, right? So it's the same theory. So to me, cybercrime is no different than physical crime. I just kind of look at it that way, right? Um, so to me, it's okay. Let's talk about the MGM. So let's say someone stole a credential. It's like someone stealing your house key. You haven't lost anything yet, right? And let's say someone breaks into your house. All right, they're in your house, but they haven't taken anything yet. So you're not actually hacked yet. When they walk around and find the valuables, that's when they start. That's when you're in trouble. So what if you
That's
just
when they start taking things, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. What if you could turn off the lights so you can't see anything, right? And that's what we do. If you keep the hacker blind, meaning you don't allow them to scan, then what are they going to do? So that's right. So that's why I like intrusion detection and scan blocking is one of the key things that sort of insurance companies say you should have, but very few people implement that, right? They implement the 2FA, they implement the thing, they implement the PAM, but what happened to the intrusion detection? So Mamori has that baked in. And this is why I mean why all-in-one is important, right? So because there's so many little things that you have to get to meet best practice that not businesses just can't implement them all individually. You have to buy 10, 15 little tools and somehow integrate them all yourself, right? It's just hard to do. That's why I say it's cost prohibitive. So yeah, so those are kind of the three use cases, from the very small, meaning I have nothing, just you deploy Mamori and you get everything. For the people who just need to cover a particular gap, like a DB PAM, they have everything else except the database security. And then the remote access. Those are the three kind of main cases that were kind of asked for. And yeah.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's pretty clear then, and I think there's quite a few organizations who could truly benefit from a software like this. I really like the when the hackers break into your house, you just turn off the lights type analogy there. That's a really good one to go by. Maybe a catchphrase for the website or some marketing material there. But yeah, that's actually a really good one. I quite like that. For the Australian organisations, and actually before we get to Australian organisations, do you also target as a like client outreach clients all over the world, or more just within the Australian market?
So actually we've the reverse. So the this is actually people always ask me, yeah, so we haven't really focused a lot in Australia at all because we have customers in the US and we have customers in Asia. So if we did Australia, I just wouldn't be able to sleep, right? We're still yeah, it's just pretty hectic. So um yeah, so we have a couple of small Australia implementations, but really the big ones are either in the US or in Asia. You know, 'cause this is in because traditionally my pedigree is from a company called Quest Software, right? So Quest Software, which got bought by Dell, we used to build productivity tools out of the Melbourne lab for the database market and things like that. So basically I just leveraged our old network of partner channels all over Asia in EMEA, right? So and the US. So that's where kind of has flowed on. Yeah, but the we're looking forward to now finally hitting Australia. So it'd be good to finally get some local customers. It'd be exciting to help them out. And it's been kind
Absolutely.
of painful actually, because I've been seeing the hacks happen here. I'm thinking, poor guys. If they could have really done it with Mamori could have really helped them, but we just didn't have the bandwidth to actually help the local guys. We're just so busy, but nothing now we can, which is good.
Yeah, just well, you mean like with the Australian hacks? I guess you're referencing the Medibank and
Oh,
Optus,
yeah, there's
among
been so
many
many big
others.
hacks. They're silly, yeah, they're silly. They're silly little hacks. It's just like, oh Lord, it's like, this could have been prevented. Um, but what can you do?
Yeah, that's it. I think, I mean, apart from the lack of sleep option, is there any other reason why you wouldn't have targeted? I mean, obviously the market is bigger across Asia and the US, but I'm curious if there was another reason other than not being able to sleep as well, for not targeting Australia earlier on.
Yeah, it was really more of the network that we knew, the people that we knew, but it was also strategic in terms of we needed a break between the US morning meetings and then the Asia afternoon meetings. Otherwise, you have no life. So, which you literally would have no life, right? It's like, yeah, because the US is like from 6 in the morning till like around 11, right? And then Asia kicks in around after lunch. So then it only gives you a couple of hours in the middle of the day. So yeah.
Fair enough, fair enough. So
Mm.
on to, I guess, more a targeted Australian audience. As you mentioned at the start there, the ASD Essential 8 audit and
Yep.
gaining a certain level of maturity is
Mm.
pretty high on the, I guess, the task list for a lot of organizations, especially those who are applying for tenders who need to meet a certain maturity level. With this software
Correct.
and I guess the reporting off the back of this, the dashboard, everything be helpful for that, and sort of how does it work? Because a lot of the people who watch these videos, either while they're live or after it's been published, are asking about compliance, and compliance, especially in the ASD Essential 8, is a huge task that I've been working through for the last at least 12 months now at organizations. And I feel like this software would be helpful, but I'd like to hear it from you on exactly how it would be helpful for people who are undergoing an Essential 8 maturity level audit.
Correct. So a lot of businesses that use Mamori, in particular in the US, are actually software companies, and we constantly get their customers require them, for the SOC 2 or high trust or HIPAA compliance documents, and um, so I guess if you're a business and you need to meet, a certain criteria, how do you meet your essential aid strategy? It's no different to us from like a business coming to us, hey, this insurance company is asking me for all these, 100 questions, right? They're actually the same questions. Whether it's SOC 2 or they're extremely similar, right? So yeah, so with Mamori, right? So if you look at the essential eight, right, a lot of the like four of the eight, 50% of the essential eight are actually about applications. Your patching, how you control your access to your apps, how you harden your applications, etc. Right? Um, the the ones that get the one little mention, like your admin access and your 2FA, those are probably the most difficult to implement, and they're actually the most critical, right, to implement, right? Because that's if you're gonna get hacked, the hackers, most hacks happen at the lowest level, and the first thing they can do is they're trying to find your backups so they can take them or encrypt them. Because the worst thing that a ransomware hacker for a ransomware hacker is he hacks you, he says, "Hey, send me Bitcoin," and you say, "Sorry, dude, I have backup." So it's like no Bitcoin for you. They don't want to hear that, right? So they go for your backups. So they need to traverse and get your backups. Hacking an app doesn't get them much. People who hack apps and do stuff, right? They either have a vendetta against the company, but most hackers are trying to get to an OS, and so really the things you want to get to is your technical safeguards around your access management, and that's what Mamori helps you do. So let's go back to the question. Hey, if I deploy Mamori, what do I get out of the box, right? So you will get all the technical safeguards that you would need for implementing the essential eight, right? Around your access management and data privacy. So you're going to get the workflow all baked in. What's the workflow? Meaning, hey, I need access to this machine. This person approves it, and then once he approves it, all that stuff is baked in addition to all the controls. So that gives you all of that. So the application hardening, if you're developing an application, there are so many, if you need help with that, there are so many free tools that do code scanning and CVE recommendations and things like that to help ensure that your software meets the standard, right? So actually, like when those responses to a customer of, hey, can you show me, they're kind of broken up into three parts. One is, how do you do your code scanning or vulnerability scanning for your code? And then your pen testing, right? How do you do that? So you have to have an answer for that, right? Then it's, what is your response when there is an incident? How do you respond and
What's the
things like
mitigation
that?
procedure, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you have to prove, and how do you test it? So, for example, we help people um, to set up, like honey tokens. So then they can set up like their own. They can hack themselves and then they can kind of simulate attacks on themselves. So then they can test their response times. Did it get detected? Because it has to be. There's a couple of things. I don't have a document here, but you got to escalate it to your CISO, and then you got to have a meeting. So you got to do all these things. So you have to be trained on that. And we kind of help people, even though we're not in the business of giving you certification. We actually help you through those steps, so actually you know how to respond to an attack, because Mamori has all the little pieces, right? And then lastly, you have to have the last response, the third response that the question is about is your access management and your data privacy, right? Um, they usually tip you, how do people access your systems? You two-factor them, et cetera, et cetera. How do they go and do updates to the system? What can they do? And then they have a lot of questions around your data privacy. When they connect to data, how you're securing it, how you masking it if they have access to ad hoc queries, etc. So Mamori will help you give answers to all those questions, and that's how it helps you implement the essential eight. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's yeah, definitely something that I think is useful for anyone who's watching now live or later, and you're working in Australia, and your company or maybe one of your clients is looking to undergo an essential eight audit. This could be a great solution for you guys to integrate in, and basically tick the boxes of the maturity level that you're chasing for that organization to try and get through and complete it. It's having done too many essential aid audits recently, it can be a very painful and tedious thing to go through. So having any sort of help there to go through each of the tasks is a huge benefit. So it's something that I'm definitely going to be looking into after the stream. And I know you've sent me through the demo account to have a play with. So I'll definitely be doing that because I do way too many essential aid audits at the moment. Onto a question that's actually quite helpful for me off the back of that, and potentially anyone else watching, is what costs are involved from the, I guess, small business all the way through to the enterprises who are interested in running this sort of software. I'm sure it's like I'm sure there's no like one size fits all, right? Because it depends on what they want to integrate. But yeah, what sort of costs are involved here?
Yep. So this is when I feel like those old school guys on TV that used to sell stuff, right? So for small business, that's right. For small business, it's free. So we don't charge. So if you're like a small business with 20, 30 staff, you have a couple of infrastructure, you're a startup, and Mamori was born because I used to do venture
Music to my
work.
ears.
Yeah, and I used to do, and we used to have all these startups that needed security, and they just didn't have the budget or the teams to implement all this stuff, right? Because especially if you're a startup and you're trying to work with government, that's like the worst possible thing. It's like the government makes you they run you through the ringer. You got to meet every single little step and all these documents, and when you're a startup, you just don't have a lot of money, right? So yeah, so for small business, there is no need for you guys to be running naked on cybersecurity anymore, right? There's no excuse anymore. If you guys are running naked, it's because you want to. You just install a Mamori server, put it in the cloud or wherever you have your stuff, on premise, doesn't matter, and then just start using it. And then at least you're covered from the basics, right? So we don't charge per server, right? So that we don't want a lot of larger organizations. Um, they have different deployments in lots of different areas. So if we charge by server, they started, instead of implementing the best thing for security, they started implementing the best thing in terms of cost, which is I didn't want that. So you can have as many servers as you want, and route the traffic on how you want it, no big deal. So we charge per seat. So it's seat-based pricing. So if you have 200 DBAs or database users that connect to the DBPAM. It doesn't matter how many databases you have. We don't charge per target either. So they can access all their databases. So we try to keep the pricing in line with other access solutions. Because people are used to paying for a 2FA, or they're used to paying for like a VPN, right? And they kind of have that price in their head. And they're used to paying for a PAM, right? So similar pricing. Well, so we're actually cheaper. So it's actually 20%. Like if you went and bought all the tools that you needed to buy, right? We're about 20% of the cost, right? So a company was spending $1 million on cybersecurity software to meet all the requirement. Now with Mamori, they probably only have to spend 200,000, right?
Which I think for any business that sort of has to report costs and things like this, that's a huge benefit, because 20% is not a small number in some cases, especially in the cybersecurity world of protection. Like $1 million is actually not unrealistic. That's actually a fairly realistic number, to be honest. I've seen some crazy ones.
Yeah, $1 million is nothing. $1 million doesn't buy you much in cybersecurity. It does not buy you much. That's right.
Yeah, that's it. On to the last question that I have before we get to the MGM and Caesars attack. And by the way, anyone who's viewing, if you have any questions about the Caesars and or MGM attacks, drop them in the chat, and I'll ask away on those, or try and answer them as best I can. So before we get to those questions, my last question was, what sort of industry trends are you seeing come across your desk in this sort of position? So on the, I guess, best practice side of security, what sort of industry trends do you see coming up at the moment?
Yeah, so the biggest trend I've actually seen is actually a lot of businesses before. So there actually has been a shift. So a lot of businesses before just didn't bother with cybersecurity because they didn't have to bother, right? It sounds silly because really, I mean, when your cyber insurance is cheap, why would you bother going through the pain and hassle of getting secure if something happens? You know, there were no big fines, 10 years ago, right? Or 5 years ago. And the insurance company just paid and helped you out. Yes, it was a bit embarrassing, but um, the risk and the cost. So the biggest shift is actually companies actually now actually want to actually be secure. So that's the big trend. So there's a big push of executives just saying, look, I just don't want to tick a checkbox. I actually want to be secure. What do I do? What do I got to do to actually be secure so I can avoid all this hassle? So I think integrated systems and all-in-one systems are kind of the trend, right? So so actually, the Department of Defense, right, Thunderdome, when they released their project with their strategy, they're like, you know what? We're tired of all these independent things. We're gonna create an integrated solution, right? Um, so the U.S. government at least was thinking the same thing that I was thinking a couple of years ago. It's like, the only way the security stuff is going to work is if you have everything integrated out of the box, right? So this way, everything works. So that's a big trend in terms of businesses. So in terms of hacks, um, hackers hackers just look for the weakest links, right? And currently, the weakest links are the ones who traditionally didn't buy a lot of cybersecurity software. Medical industry, hospitals, paramedics, they have their data-rich data sets. They have, all the patient information, all the medical history, and they traditionally not big buyers of cybersecurity, right? Usually big buyers of
Not at all.
cybersecurity are banks
Not.
and telcos, right? And look, yeah, that's right. And look, Medicaid getting attacked is a perfect example, right? The next one is actually consulting companies, right? Consulting companies usually think, I don't have to buy software. My customer is the one that buys security software. I don't, but actually, the consultants are the weak link. They have access and credentials to 100 customers, right? So hackers hack them, and the issue is for consulting firms, if you get most the reports show that once a consulting firm gets hacked, customers ditch them quick, right? So usually that firm could be you could so basically if you're a consulting firm and you're not tight on your cybersecurity and you get hacked, you could possibly lose your lunch, right? That's what the stats show. Most consulting firms that are hacked have big hacks against them, and the customers just ditch them, right?
That's
They
actually
just
a very
'cause-
good segue into the
mm,
Caesar attack, because
mm,
the Caesars casino, because that was essentially how they were breached. So it was, from what I was reading, there was um, essentially like a help desk system that had very little security as well as very little cybersecurity awareness training, which is a trend that I'm seeing at the moment. Is a lot of people are going and undergoing cybersecurity awareness training, which is good. I think that's a good thing
good.
for the industry, because it helps everyone. And often the weakest link when I'm doing awareness training sessions, I normally say the weakest link in an organization is often between the chair and the keyboard. It's the person sitting there who's actually causing some problems, or potentially answering questions that they didn't know they shouldn't answer over the phone. Um, so it's interesting to see that it is the case really with things like Caesars, where their consultancy help desk, or service desk, or whatever you want to call it, who was supporting the environment, or systems and protections at Caesars, were the ones who got breached, and that's how they gained access, because who else has admin control other than the organization that's helping to secure you? So
Correct. And that's right. That's right.
it's an interesting one, and something that I think really does need to be looked into. There's a question here in the chat, says, would Mamori have stopped the MGM and Caesars ransomware attacks? I like that question. It's a good question. What do you reckon? Do you think it would have? I'm sure it would have helped, but do you think it would have like stopped turned off the lights, as to say,
So
on the
yeah,
hack.
well, yeah. So let's go. So we take the stand that your credentials have already been stolen. So that's our assumption, right? And then we also take the stand that even because in this particular example in the MGM crescent, not only did they steal or manage to take software engineer someone's login, they also found a way to circumvent the 2FA, right? So there was certain things that had two-factor, but then certain things didn't. So they found the way in that did not. So one, mamori would make it impossible to make, if you did it properly, everything would be two-factored, right? Now, the reason why there's a gap with 2FA is because the current 2FA solutions are primarily 2FA for applications. They don't 2FA on IP access. You need to have SAML or OpenID or OAuth. Now, so Mamori, we can 2FA like a printer. When you access a printer, it's got an IP address. We can two-factor a webcam, right? So we can two-factor on the IP
I didn't
access,
know
right?
That's cool.
Yeah,
I had no
because
idea that existed.
that is because really, if you look at the recommendations, is two-factor everything. It's not just two-factor things that are modern that have SAML and OpenID and OAuth, right? It's 2FA everything. Your file shares, your this. So that's the second thing. Our two-factor would have slowed down the hacker because every time he went and tried to access an IP address, he would get two-factor, right? So it's impossible to circumvent. Now, with Mamori, if he was running
the
scans,
two-factor works on the IP address of the endpoint.
yeah. So the target you're trying to get to, you're going to get two-factored on that. So one, we check to make sure you have access to the target. If you don't have access to the IP, in the microsegmentation rule, you won't see it. We'll block it. But let's say this admin has access to all the IPs. So every time he access any IP, 2FA, 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 any IP port combination. So same box. He access SSH, 2FA. He access the RDP. He access the file share. He would be getting 2FA. So the end user, whoever account that he stole, that guy's phone would be going crazy. It's like, why am I getting all these 2FAs? So one, the 2FA would definitely prevent. The microsegmentation would help. But the next thing that would probably help is the intrusion detection, right? So hackers typically are going to scan networks to look for where you keep your backups, right? So we're going to start scanning the moment he would have run a scan, boom, his laptop, his device blocked. It's dead in the water. Turn off, the lights are off. Bing. That's it. Lights are off. And on the side, we actually
phone just going off its absolute nut, digging from 2FA notifications.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, security is built in layers. In Amamori, we assume that every layer has been breached, right? Your password has been compromised, the 2FA has been compromised. You're now a user. So now it's just the data and the hacker versus us. How are we going to stop them? Stop the scan. You stop the scan, that's it. He can't find you. The lights are off. So yeah, so we have many layers.
This could work really well. That could be kind of fun for a security team, which is because you can segment it like this and 2FA and just put basically walls up on different ports. What you could do also to have a bit of fun is open up some walls that lead to something like a honeypot. That would be kind of cool.
Right. Well, that's right. So I'll tell you a funny story. So in Singapore government, we're working a lot of work with high trust for power plants and water treatment plants and the OT infrastructure, right? So they hold a lot of hackathons where you have red teams, blue teams, right? So we went and participated, and we said, okay, we're going to deploy this. The problem this is the problem. Once Mamori was deployed, they said, okay, can we turn off your stuff because no one can do anything? So it's like, because basically it was so isolated. Once you fully turn everything on, the hacker can't do anything. So the competition is very boring, right? So so basically
so I guess you won the hackathon on the blue team side there.
Well, yeah. So they said we're going to have another event because basically they wanted this event to focus on the monitoring, the detection. They wanted hackers to go in, and they wanted all these people to detect a hack, But with mamori there, the hacker could never hack, so no one would detect. No one detected. So they said we'll have another one for prevention, but we wanted detection. Yeah, so we didn't participate in that one. So I thought it was quite funny
That's
that
awesome.
it was too closed for to be allowed. We were too secure, too secure. We took the fun out of it.
Yeah, pretty much. You just ruined it for everyone, but also a
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
good example
yeah.
of
That's
how it
right.
works.
Yeah,
It
we
would
turned
be
off the
pretty.
lights. That's right. We
Yeah,
turned off the
exactly.
lights.
Yeah.
That's right.
It would be cool as well to see. I guess on like so for the people out there who are interested in building home labs, and I have a home lab series on creating an attack and defense lab, which is pretty much the same as what these things are. What you could do if you wanted to run Mamori in the middle for the incident response to get all of the information out, because normally the home lab that I recommend to build is to just put up pfSense, which is like a free firewall solution, which is good, and you can get some logs out of it. But what if you built a home lab? You've got an attack machine and a virtual environment with some, vulnerable machines sitting there, or even maybe not vulnerable. And you put Mamori in the middle or over the top of the vulnerable machines or the blue team side to get data out of it. As a home lab system, I think the learning opportunity there would be substantial. It'd be crazy. You'd be able to get so much information out of this to better defend an environment, or if you want, just turn
Definitely,
off the lights. That would be cool as.
definitely. Well, definitely, that's right. So we actually deploy. Um, so we set up. We do have essentially what you've described. We have environments with databases and this and that, and then we publicly expose those ports to the internet, right? And for years now, we would just get a because basically you have bots scanning the internet for IPs and ports that are open, right? And when we first started, until you know, um, sometimes it would attack us so much that they would crash things and but now it's been ages since an attack has been able to come in. So we actually still have open boxes with open databases, open ports, and we see the attacks coming. We get thousands of attacks every day. And you're right. We can see the patterns. We can see what bots. We can see, okay, yeah, and then so yeah, you do learn a lot on how people are attacking and what they're trying to do. And actually, our logs contain every single login name that these bots are looping through, right? So um, because yeah, when they detected, like for example, like a SQL Server port, you can see you can see they're running. We know which script they're running because we're familiar with the script kiddie kits, the hex scripts, right? Oh yeah, they're running the script because you can see all the logins are there, the same one. They're just looping through the logins. Yeah.
These damn script kiddies out there just reusing
Yeah.
scripts off GitHub. Come on, guys, be creative.
Well,
Use
yeah,
some
because
cool shit.
well, think about it, because hacking now, hackers they want to make money. They don't want to spend time hacking. There's no more. There's very few hackers that I would consider true hackers. They're like the hackers who want to hack the government because they got some issue with this government, and they're like hacking, right? Now these guys who want to make money, let's be real, right? They're just grabbing scripts that some other hackers have written, and they're just running them. When they get lucky, they either sell that information, right, to some other hacker who's going to use that to do something else, or they do an attack, the next attack, to try and get some data. But really, they're just probably leave stuff running, and then go and hang out with their buddies, drinking or whatever, and having fun. Oh, I got a hit, and then they do stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's like a side hustle, right? No one's going to be, So yeah, I don't think they're the when we talk about trends. So I think the sophistication of attacks aren't they haven't increased as much as I thought they would increase, right? Like they're still not attacking you SSH properly. They're not trying to like they're only trying to brute force passwords, right? Things like that. So they're still kind of keeping, the dumb level attacks. They're not really trying. So the sophistication hasn't increased too much. What has increased is attacks from insiders, right? Because before 3 years ago, and before 5 years ago, there was no market. You couldn't go, hey, I've stolen this data. Can I sell it somewhere? But you can do that now. If you've stolen data, you can sell it somewhere. You can find your dark web spot and sell this data for some Bitcoin. So if I'm an insider and I got beef with a business, and or my boss, I didn't get that raise I didn't want, well, you know what? Screw him. I'm gonna go steal some data and just sell it for some Bitcoin, and I don't care. You know.
I think
So
that's
that's a big
actually a
trend.
growing trend that I've seen,
Mm,
especially in the defensive government space. A lot of insider threats, which is it's an interesting topic of its own, um, and it's
correct.
I mean
Correct.
it's high risk, so yeah, some of the information that can be sold is I mean obviously no one wants their IP sold, so it's for a small business or any business it's potentially massively damaging. For
Mm.
governments, especially in defense, it's crazy damage. Like the risk is just astronomical. So it's
Astronomical. That's right. So, yeah. So we're well from that's a problem that we've been trying to focus on because it's um protecting against the scripted is 100% comfortable. Protecting from insiders, you got to be a bit smarter. So I'll give you an example. What's that mean, right? So our first EBPAM, you could you could limit. A user could only select these many rows from a database, and that they're blocked, and that's it, right? But what if people usually steal data. They don't do it in one big bang. They go and select, 100 rows, every day, and then over across 6 months. How do you detect those slow steals, right? So we put something in place to detect the slow steals. Hey, this user's been selecting 100 rows, different rows from this same table so now you can put these sort of row limit alerts. You should go see what Jimmy's doing. He's basically been extracting 100 rows or 1,000 rows from this table for he's reached his limit slowly. Right, so things like that. So typically those sorts of uh, alerts, those would be very advanced alerts in the old sims that someone would have to kind of code up with anomaly detection and a special AI, this and that, and etc. Right? But now it's in the box, and that's, I think, that we talk about trends. That's the big trend that's coming, right? AI is just going to be baked in to security tools, proper AI, right? Because right now, the AI in anomaly and finding out, these sort of anomalies and these edge cases or these slow steals, right? People have to kind of implement that in their own when they implement their own little data lake, security data lake, and stuff like that, right? And then, or they have to buy some special module and test it. I think the AI should be like your phone, right? You just use the AI in your phone, but it just works. So when you buy security solution, it should just have this stuff in it, right? You shouldn't have to be trying to implement your own module. So I think more and more AI is just going to be baked into security products to actually make companies secure. Because to me, that's the biggest trend. The biggest trend that's driving everything is businesses actually want to be secure. They're training their people. It means they actually want to be secure, right? When you said they're training people, that means, you know what? We actually need this to work, right? It's not just a tick box and a check I send, CyberArk, right?
yeah, that's true. And I think like another huge driving force is one you've touched on already as well, which is insurance companies who are sort of pushing companies to become more secure as well. As you need to get insurance, you need to get your cyber insurance. I know my cyber insurance went up from last year on this year almost double. The price went up
Yeah.
almost double, and that's normal. Like that's just how it is. I asked some other business owners, and they're like, "Yeah, that's just the way it is, dude. Just
Double is
get
lucky.
real."
I've had people that go from like 15,000 to 45,000, right?
Oh,
So yeah, yeah,
that would be painful. I mean, that could potentially just
yeah.
end some small businesses, which would be
Yeah, well, yeah, triple your premium. It's like, what in the world? And yeah, so and they're like, if you don't implement this stuff, we won't even sell you the insurance. It's like they're like, okay, hold on. Yeah, it's tough out there. That's right.
that's
People
crazy.
actually people actually have to be secure. So the problem right now, and I think is that um because people didn't fully implement security, right? they were gaps, right? So and then hackers attacked. So it's almost like your house, right? So in your house, you have a front door, you have windows on every window, you have a back door, you have a roof. It's all you actually, you may have an alarm, you probably have a camera for your front door, you know. Um, that's what it needs to be secure, right? It's not like, but what businesses are actually doing right now is they implement the front door. Okay, I got a front door. I'm secure. No, what about the windows? You gotta
What
put
about
locks in your
everything else?
windows too. Right? Yeah, so it's like, yeah. So a lot of people are actually they have a fence without a gate or a gate without a fence. It's just incomplete. So that's why I think the goal is actually to help businesses um, to implement, best practice. And I don't fault businesses because the reality businesses they're just doing what they think they need to do best, right? It's really the software vendors that I think are culpable in this. It's like, we kind of oversell, right? It's like, hey, use my little widget and you'll be secure. So okay,
Oversell
I'll
and
use your widget.
underdeliver in a lot of the
Yeah, that's
cases.
right. That's right. So like, okay, now hey, if you 2FA your apps, you're protected from ransomware. When you look at the marketing literature, it's like, wow, I only have to implement this thing and I'm protected from ransomware. It's truly a buyer beware market. It's almost like just because you're buying a feature doesn't mean you actually have a security solution. To be secure, you need all, you know, depending on which best practicing you read, you need all the technical features, the technical safeguards, right? Not just one, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Before we wrap this one up, we'll end this stream really soon. But I just wanted to ask one more question, which I just thought of when we were talking about AI, and I'm interested to hear your view on. I mean, you sort of already gave a view on how AI is going to shape the offensive security space and potentially hacking into or breaching information from companies. What is Mamori doing to protect against the threat of AI? I understand it works quite quickly, like it operates fast. So I'm curious to hear what the protection is against the potential threat of AI on the future landscape of business IT systems.
Yeah, so really what AI can give you is just quicker, well, one of the key things that AI gives you is quicker detection. So when you have the controls, you're kind of protected from basic attacks, right? I guess your standard attacks, your bots, and that's on the attacks. They're using bots and they're just trying to find the gap, right? So um, with that, I guess let's focus on attack AI first, right? So when you're writing attack AI, you know, there's so much area to cover. The business surface is actually quite broad now, right? So you need good AI to go and find, which application, which vulnerability. There's so many things that you have to go through. You need, good AI to go and scripts to go and uh, morph and change as it learns, right? Okay, I'm attacking this thing. It's got this. So now I'm going to try this strategy, and then so as it loops through its strategies, right? So that's what I call sort of your attack scripts. And your access controls can kind of protect from those attack scripts, right? Now, what what defensive AI is going to be good at is in detecting from the not attack scripts, the other attacks, the insider threat. That's the hard one. So you have someone who has access. They're allowed to do stuff. They're allowed to touch things and things. So how do you detect um, something that's anomalous without being too noisy? Because that's always been the issue with security reporting is you get all these alarms, and after a while you get sort of alarm, alarm. I call it alarmed out, right? It's like There's just too many alarms. I don't know which one to pay attention to, right? So how do you make it? How do you have something that actually shows you, threat versus just a user that's fumbling around, or maybe that's a support issue. He doesn't know what he's doing, right? So that's what we're doing. We're writing AI actually for support. So to help, here's a user who's having issues in just doing his job, but he's not trying to attack you. He's just can't log into AD properly, or doesn't know how to use a 2FA, right? Or forgot his password and is just trying 50 times. So, so actually in helping the support desk of that business, right? So, because then in doing that, then everything else is actually not a support guy. So then we're writing AI around trying just to find the other behavior. So that, and because we can see the user's HTTP access, TCP access, database access, SSH access, RDP, because we have it all, if you are using all the modules, we get a very clear picture of what a user does or has been doing. And then when that behavior changes, we can alert, right, on that, right? So
that's interesting. So you could use AI in that case to just monitor the difference in behavior, because if behavior looks different to what the normal is, then it could very quickly just decide, hey, actually, this looks a bit suspect. Maybe this is something that should be investigated or reported on at least.
correct. And because we're integrated with the approval system, so when, let's say before, we would alert, hey, this user who's never accessed this production server, we would alert you. And then you would say, oh no, but he's got that's a dot alert, right? Because but now we can say, all right, this user is accessing the system. Oh, but he's got approval. All right, so it's okay, right? So even though new behavior that's approved is okay behavior, right? So we want, but if a user starts, so I'll give you some things that like if he starts running catalog search queries, so these are SQL that will fail. Maybe he's trying to select from things, select certain columns that he doesn't have permission for. So actually, we're sort of error analysis. Where is he failing that's different than he failed in the past? So there's all these strategies that you have to kind of pull together to try to see which behavior should be alerted on, right? So then we can, yeah.
That's so interesting. I love the whole space of AI and how it's going to sort of change a lot of different industries. So it's always interesting for me to hear about the potential future of AI in the cybersecurity realm. I think that's a very interesting topic. But maybe for another chat another day. We've run out of time here today, so
Okay.
I'm going to end this stream. But thank you very much for coming along today and having a chat, and for introducing Mamori to the viewers here, and for just having a general chat and discussing about the future of IT, the current state of IT, and industry trends and everything else in between that we've talked about. For anyone who wants to watch this stream later, it will be published on my YouTube channel just after this. So it takes about half an hour for YouTube to process and make sure I haven't been swearing or live streaming anything dodgy. So it should be up in about half an hour's time. But thank you again, Omar, for coming on and having a chat. I appreciate your time, and I hope to talk with you again sometime about the next stages of Mamori and what's new in development there.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me. Hope your listeners try it out and they have some good results.
Me too. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be trying it out after this. So, yeah. All right. Cool. Thanks for coming along. Thank you. And I'll see all the rest of you guys on the next video.